So again, 1987. It was early morning. I think it was a Sunday morning. And I got a phone call from Kenny Z. First, I mean, right after sunrise, and he says, "Hey, man, I'm down on Loxley. We put Darren's car into a ditch. Come pull us out." So I got my junker, drove over to pull their junker out of the ditch and pull off Highway 49, and sure enough, there they are. The car's like ass end in the ditch. I think he spun out. They're probably back there messing around, getting squirrely in the car. And then Kenny told me that him and Darren were in Roseville like 2 nights before that. He was just telling me the story. So they're in Roseville, and they're stranded. I don't know where Darren's car was, but I mean, this is almost 40-year-old news here. So I'm trying to remember the story best I can. Secondhand news here. And Kenny said that they were stranded in Roseville. They were hunkered down in a shopping center. You know, you can get underneath the eave in front of the stores, and it was pouring rain. They were stranded, drunk. At least Kenny was drunk, and trying to come up with a plan. Let me remind you, Kenny's been in and out of juvenile hall, county jail, and state prison all the way up to his death in 2009 when he OD'd on drugs. So he was, quite the career criminal. I couldn't say hardcore criminal. He definitely wasn't a pro. That's for damn sure. But he, would get loaded and go do crimes. It wasn't his thing. He wouldn't set out to do crimes. I think he just wound up doing them when he got high or drunk, which happens to a lot of people that involve themselves in that lifestyle. And he was telling me the story. He goes, "Yeah, we're stranded in Roseville. They're stranded in Roseville, and pouring rain, middle of the night, and him and Darren are hunkered down, and they see a car pull in across the parking lot, dark, empty parking lot, 3 o'clock in the morning, pouring rain, Roseville, California, 1987, and the guy gets out of his car, and he has a stack of newspapers. He's replenishing a newspaper stand, which for the most part doesn't exist anymore, but because there's still some old farts that still read a newspaper and even pay money to read a newspaper, and even one step further, have a subscription in 2024. So this guy gets out and he's replenishing a newspaper. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to him, Kenny is probably 30 yards back, somewhere in the darkness, hunkering down from the rain, and taking off his shoes. He's already devised a plan to rob this guy. He's probably going to steal his car. He's going to probably rob him and steal his car because he was very drunk. Kenny's the type of guy who would probably never do this if he was sober, even if you're stranded. Maybe not. I mean, he has pulled crimes sober, but when he's drunk, it's crime time for Kenny Z. So he takes off his shoes, takes off his socks, puts his shoes back on, puts his socks over his hands to cover his fingerprints, and starts walking towards this dude. Now, imagine being a middle-aged man in 1987 California, replenishing your, newspaper stands at night, turning around and seeing a 6'4", 200-pound, long, heavy metal blonde hair, now drenched in rain, black leather jacket, jeans, and socks over his hands, and pronouncing the words, "Are you ready to die?" What would you do? So I'm enthralled in the story. He's just telling me the story. I go, "Well, what'd the guy do?" And he goes, "Oh, he got in his car and drove off." That's probably good for him, Asshole, robbing people in the middle of the night. Karma's a bitch. That's why he spent his whole life in jail and prison, because of karma, and the cops caught up to him. But it was just fun to do when you're fucking 17 and you're really drunk and it's the 80s, you know, and you're poor. So you told me about that. I'm gonna jump over to somewhere near that time frame. It was my first DUI that I got 19. No, actually, I was 89 when I got the DUI. It wasn't 87, so it could have been. Anyhow, I got a DUI when me and Kenny and Darren went downtown to downtown Auburn, and back then liquor outlet was the spot to be. So a lot of people met up at, and there was supposed to be a huge party somewhere, and we were ready for a huge party. So we hooked up with some good old boys. I don't know who, I forgot who these motherfuckers were. Somebody from high school, guys that weren't inside in our clique, and but we kind of knew them. I think they're just good old boys, good old farm boys. You know, we're going up to the lake. I guess it's supposed to be an epic night, epic party, and we all pooled our money and got a shit ton of booze. And I was already drunk. I was drunk when we were getting the booze, so that's how I got the DUI. So all the booze went in this dude's car. I have no idea who that motherfucker was. I'm sure back then I could name him. I barely see his face, but so they had all the booze. I was in my 78 Nova with Darren, and I told Kenny, I go, you ride with the booze. One of us has to ride with the booze. These motherfuckers ain't taking out with our, because they just, I forgot about a shitload of booze. We were going to fucking, and like I said, I probably wasn't drunk. I was probably getting a good buzz going. I just had a brand new fifth of Kessler, not a fifth. I had a brand new pint of Kessler whiskey underneath my seat that me and Darren were working on. So I'm following these guys, and Kenny's with them. So I'm following, we get on Elm Avenue, and then they turn into the fucking Lucky parking lot for some reason. I think they had to make one more stop. I don't know why they were, but I was following them. Well, back then, this is 1989, and I had this thing. This is how out of it I was back then. I had this thing, especially because everybody I knew drinking and driving. Even with Carrie Lightner starting Mothers Against Drunk Driving, all that shit going on, popping off back in the 80s. Everybody I knew was drinking and driving still. I drove drunk everywhere I went. Always. I had an ice chest full of beer, just like my dad, just like everybody else did. Yeah. I had this little neat thing that I thought was funny. When I'd pull up, if I was following a friend somewhere and I'd been drinking, we'd pull up to a stop sign or a stoplight, I would bump them with my front bumper. Bump! And I barely knew these guys, right? So I thought I'd do it to them and really fuck with them. Kenny was in the car with them, and what are they going to do? Beat us up? So I gave him a nice little, we stopped at Elm Avenue at the light, right over the Interstate 80 freeway. You know, Interstate 80 runs through Auburn, California. It's a major spot for such a small town. So I bump into these motherfuckers. Then the light turns green. We pull into the parking lot. I pull on the parking lot, and I'm getting lit up. Actually, I didn't get lit up like the sheriff or APD. It was one back in the 80s. If you're in California, the cops had their little bubblegum machine up above. But if you saw one single red light, it's not like that nowadays. But if you saw a single red light behind you, that was CHP. That was California Highway Patrol. And you were fucked. You were butt fucked. You ain't talking your way out of shit. If it's APD, you're kind of fucked. If it's Placer County, they're saying, oh, Cabral, you fuck. What's going on? It was the Placer County Sheriff's Department. We were all bros, man. I'd scare them because all I'd have to say is, fuck you, I'll sick Jacinto on your ass. I worked for the Cowboy, man. And the Cowboy had a ranch, cattle ranch, right next to Jacinto. Captain Jacinto, the Placer County Sheriff's Department. And it would work half the time. I said, get away from me, man. You don't even know who you're fucking with. If it was a rookie sheriff's deputy back in the 80s, I would say, fucking, dude, I'm buds. Back then, it kind of worked to say, I know this guy. I know. Nowadays, they don't give a fuck. No cop gives a fuck who you know. They'll fucking beat you up and haul you in. Back then, all I had to say was Jacinto. I'm with Jacinto, bitch. I fixed his fence on his ranch. Get away from me. And sometimes it works. Sometimes they'd be like, oh, that's funny. Well, I knew them. We all knew each other by name. The cops and us in North Auburn. It was good. That's why we had so much fun up there, because the cops would see us and recognize us, and they'd turn around and they'd take off. They'd pull up to something, some shit going on, and they'd, hey, Mosak! And they'd say, oh, what's up, Cabral? And they'd fucking, boom, they're gone. So anyhow, got my first DUI, red light, CHP, no way out. Those guys took Kenny, and those guys take off Kenny Z, and those guys take off in that car. They're gone. They're fucking gone. They ain't stopping for whatever they were stopping. They're out of there. They're going to the lake to party with with half of my money and my booze in there. Kenny didn't put any money in there. Kenny's never had a job in his fucking life. So he's off to the lake drinking my booze while I'm going to jail. Going to jail. So I go to jail. I can't remember if it was my first time in Placer County jail or not. That was back in the 80s, back in the old days, dude. You go into Placer County jail today, dude, it looks like a fucking daycare dentist office or some shit. Back then, they take you in the booking. It was concrete, chain link fencing everywhere, and some concrete holding cells, and a fucking big desk for the cops and computers for the cops to do all your shit. And you had to talk to the cops through the chain link fence. You couldn't just reach across and put them in a headlock, or they couldn't reach across and put you in a headlock. Back then, this is the 80s. It was disgusting. It was dirty. It looked like a garage. Nowadays, they've got it so pretty. It's so nifty now. Everything's padded. They can't slam your head against the concrete wall anymore. So I get out the next morning. Like I said, I can't remember if it was my first time in Placer County Jail. I think it was, actually. It was my first time. I've been in juvenile hall before, once. I never got caught, dude. I just never. I was smart enough to be in certain areas, certain times, and doing certain things to where I just, didn't involve the cops. The cops, I always intersected with the cops after I'd been drinking for hours. And I just happened to be headed somewhere, and that's when problems would start, is when I'm fucked up. Because cops don't. I've been arrested 11 times. I've had on foot and in a vehicle. I've probably had, from the age of 14 till now, I've probably had 200 police contacts in my life, whether it be approached on foot, pulled over, written a ticket, whatever. I used to get pulled over every fucking weekend back in the 80s. I've had at least 200 police contacts and 11 arrests, and I can't even tell you how many speeding tickets I've been written in my life. I like to drive fast. I don't give a fuck. I know how to work it. I ride a crotch rocket, so I know how to work it. Like right now, in the state of Nevada, I can go out and get a speeding ticket. As long as it's not 26 over, I'm fine. If it's 25 miles an hour, if I'm doing 80, if I'm doing 100 if I'm doing 95 in a 70 mile an hour zone, I can still, 25 over, I can still qualify for driver's school. Won't show up in my insurance, won't show up in DMV. But I have to be good for a year. Here in Nevada, it's only a year. California, you got to be good for 18 months. Or just get another speeding ticket, pay for it, take the hit on your shit. So I got out of jail the next morning. No idea. I was good headed to Kenny's house because I'm sure, Darren, by a ray of light from God in heaven, the cops didn't tow my car. They gave the keys to Darren. Darren drove the car to Kenny's E's. So I walked to Kenny's, which was a few miles from the jail, conveniently enough. I get to Kenny's. Of course, Kenny's not there because he's still at the lake drinking my fucking booze. My beer. I think I probably pitched in a couple cases of beer on that load. We didn't fuck around back then. We drank. We like to drink. It's always been that way. Get how much beer you want us to get? As much as you can. Here's the money. How much should we get? As much as you can with this. It's the 80s, baby. Come on. Motley Crue and Dawkins and Van Halen. Bro. So I get to Kenny's, and it was pretty quiet actually, and I went in and went in Kenny's room, and Darren's passed out on the bed. And I said, and I woke him up, and he's all, "Oh, you're out." Darren's like Kenny. He's lived in juvenile hall, jail. I don't know if he's ever been a convicted felon or not, but they're both a couple of hood rats, a couple of Peckerwood. So he gets up, and for some reason, I think could have still been a little drunk from the night before, because I was ready to party, dude. I was like, "Fuck this, I'm out. Let's drink. Let's get drunk." And Darren's all, "Okay, let's get drunk." It's like fucking. I was OR'd at like 070800 hours, 0900. They try to keep you there so you do sober up. Nowadays, you have to blow to get out, which sucks. You have to fucking blow on a goddamn breathalyzer to get out of jail if you're in there for drunk shit. If they believe you're inebriated. And that fucking sucks, because now you're getting alcohol sickness and you need a liquor store quick. But back then they'd release it and you just, "All right, fuck you, asshole. See you tonight. See you next weekend." And so we start drinking. I don't know. I think I had my car. Yeah, he got my car. And I told him, I go, "Hey, you know there's that fresh bottle of Kessler under my seat, right?" He goes, "Oh, I forgot all about that." So we start drinking that. So we're drinking, I think we drank some beers. We're drinking that whiskey. And we ended up partying. We had no idea where Kenny was at. And no cell phones at that time. And so we're sitting in Kenny's mom's kitchen. Kenny's mom, it was summer. She was probably camping. She camped a lot with her biker friends and her boyfriends and other boyfriends and biker boyfriends. So she was gone a lot on the weekend. And so me and Darren are sitting in Kenny's mom's kitchen dining room table getting liquored, getting drunk, blasting the stereo, listening to some Ozzy. And I think we were like, "Fuck." Oh yeah, by the way, I think one of Kenny's mom's boyfriends was passed out in her bed in her bedroom. I remember that. And the reason why I remember that is because we had to go wake him up. And I'll tell you the reason why I had to go wake him up real soon. So me and Darren are getting lit in Kenny's mom's kitchen dining room table, and just, "Fuck yeah, bro." And we're hitting that. I think there's some beers in the fridge, and we were drinking some beers to start the morning. And then, if you're wondering what this says, of course, I think it's backwards on here, isn't it? So we are getting lit at the kitchen table in the morning. And then I think Kenny's sister probably got up and walked through the kitchen, and we're all lusting after her. She was pretty hot. Her name was Michelle. My little Michelle Bell. She liked me when she was huge, though. She gained a bunch of weight, and back in the 80s, it wasn't cool to have a fat girlfriend. So, couldn't do that. Then she lost a bunch of weight, got all hot, and then I wanted her, and then there's too many other guys that wanted her. But that's a whole other story. I don't want to get distracted here by Michelle. And we're getting fucking lit. They were getting hammered, right? And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this little yellow object go, and it flew out the kitchen door, which was left wide open because we were getting drunk. It was Kenny's mother's cockatiel. And I looked at Darren and I go, "That was Kenny's mom's fucking bird! Shit! Holy fuck, we gotta go get that motherfucker." And I get up, I run outside, and I didn't see this little yellow motherfucker nowhere, man. Where the fuck did Woodstock go? We lost Woodstock. That wasn't his name, but this little yellow cockatiel motherfucker. The fucking bird got out. Betty's fucking bird got out. Fuck! And I was so drunk. I was drunk from the night before. I didn't get any sleep in jail. You don't sleep in jail. And booking? Fuck no. I was up drunk telling jokes to complete strangers in jail. People that have probably killed people. Who knows why they're in there. That's one thing about jail. You meet people in jail, you have no idea why they're there. And nobody talks in jail. You become friends with somebody, come close and do a lot of time with them, you're going to find out, but if somebody else tells you about them. But you have no idea who you're talking to. You're talking to a guy about, oh, well, I think the Raiders' last draft NFL draft pick was no good. And you could be talking about football with a guy that just strangled a fucking 9-year-old girl. You never know who the fuck you're locked up with. But I was drunk in booking, telling everybody jokes, and they were digging it. There's a jailhouse comedian. There's one in every jailhouse, one or two or three of us. So the fucking Betty's bird got out, and I had to do something about it before she found out about it. If she even knew we got drunk in her kitchen, she's an alcoholic too, but if she knew, she would have been pissed, just because she liked to be pissed off about something. That's what she did. She's one of those alcoholics that like to fight, and her and Kenny would have knockdown dragouts all the time. There's something to be said about watching your buddy in a knockdown dragout with his mother in the kitchen, living room, whatever. She would literally try to come at him and fight him full bore, and Kenny would just be like, bitch. He'd get her in a kind of a bear hug move and kind of, come on, Mom, sit down, put her on the couch, easy, try not to hurt Mom. So I go outside, can't find the fucking bird anywhere. No bird. And I just happened to look over around the corner, and the son of a bitch was in this little tree over here, this little cedar tree or whatever. So my drunk ass goes up there easily. Good birdie bird. And I had to climb the tree a little bit to get up there, and I reach, and I know my mistake. I realized my mistake as soon as I did it, because what I should have did was just went and snatched the son of a bitch and been good. But I was trying to be gentle. I didn't want to hurt it, and I was very drunk, and I just went to close my hands, and it took off. It flew off. It flew beyond the parking lot to this little area. It flew off about 50 yards beyond, past this field, to where it took off so goddamn far, it turned into a little yellow dot, and it just landed in another tree in a fucking field. And I'm like, this isn't good. And I took off running because I was very drunk, and to get to that area, to where the fucking bird was. And I came to a spot where they just did some recent construction, so there's a dirt embankment, and I jumped down about 6 feet or so because I thought I was Spider-Man or something, and I jumped 6 feet down, and my plan was to land on top of a cinder block retaining wall. Cinder block retaining wall filled with concrete and rebar and all that stuff. That was my plan, my drunken plan. But what actually happened was my heels touched one edge of these cinder block concrete retaining walls, and just barely scraped it. But the next thing to make impact on the concrete was my tailbone, my coccyx tailbone. Now let's freeze for a minute. Needless to say, I was in a world of pain. But there's drunkenness and shock, and the only thing saving me was probably the whiskey. And it hurt like a son of a bitch, even with all that whiskey in my system. But I grunted and toughed it out and said, never mind the bird. So I somehow made it back up that hill, back up to Kenny's house. Sat there for a minute, and Darren's like, "You all right, man? That was one hell of a fall." I go, "Nah, man, I ain't all right. I ain't all right." And my tailbone's broken. I literally broke my ass, and yeah. So let's freeze for a minute. a week, the next weekend, I got drunk at the park. Go figure, I got drunk the next weekend. And I drunkenly went to sit down at the base of a cedar tree, and there was a knuckle of root. You know how roots stick up from the ground? And I thought I was going to sit on the nice soft ground, and I sat. That knuckle from that root was sticking up, and it met my tailbone that I just basically almost shattered the 7 days previous. That's one of the most painful things I ever felt in my life. And again, good thing I was already drunk because it still hurt like hell. So I was pretty much put out of commission for about 2 weeks after that one. And yeah, so that was my first DUI, man, and involving Kenny Z. Drinking and driving is strictly advised against on this channel because we don't drink and drive here at High Desert Research. We do what we do what Johnny Carson said: drink then drive. I'm kidding. That's a joke. I don't even drink anymore. I quit. I'm 4 months sober. I just quit. I drank for 25 years from age 15 to 39. Quit for 14 years, so I was age 53. And after 14 years of sobriety, I decided to have some drinks. And I drank off and on for about a year, and then I haven't had drinks since 2023. My name is Jimmy. I'm 55 years old, and I've been sober for 4 months and some change. No, it's May. We're going on 5 months, baby. Yeah! Ooh, let's do this!